And now we're going to move on to our next presentation, which looks a little bit closer at the Exeter and Cranbrook local delivery pilots. So I'm pleased to invite to the stage Councillor Matt Osborne and James Watmoe.
Catherine set that up really nicely actually in terms of the challenge that we face around inactivity, and I'm going to labour the point a little bit around 1 in 4 people being physically inactive, and that is a real challenge for us, and we need to think about this really differently. I mean, it's pleasing for Sport England as a national organisation to see over sort of 75% of people that are fairly active or active. It's a fantastic news story for us, and we've invested a lot of money into that work over a number of years. But all of that money and all of the work that we've done in building new facilities and putting on interventions at a local level hasn't shifted the number on the far side. And so we really need to do something differently. And Catherine also sort of alluded to this as well, that those percentages almost double when we look at certain groups. So people on low incomes, people with disabilities, people sometimes living in rural locations, or older people as well. So it's not a fair representation of the whole population, that 1 in 4. It is definitely masking some stubborn inequalities. So like I say, Sport England, we needed to do something differently. I think Mark mentioned earlier about embracing change, and I think that's something that we're trying to do at Sport England, is to embrace some change and some different thinking. So we've decided to take the approach of a whole systems approach, and this is something that we've heard about throughout the day in terms of whole systems, and really thinking about how people live their lives and what surrounds them in their everyday lives, right from their own sort of attitudes and behaviours and the way that they think and feel, right through to the sort of policies that are surrounding them in their location. And you can see all the different sort of levels that we are thinking about with this work in pilots at the moment. So we had a lot of interest in the programme, a lot of interest in pilots, probably over 110, 120 applications to the programme, and we got down to a lucky bunch of 12. And you can see the 12 there across England, and we tried to pick some really different places. And the reason for that was that we wanted to learn, and we wanted to learn that we could take to other places. So if we picked 12 cities, that wasn't really going to be that relevant for rural areas when we started to learn. So you can see that we picked places from the size of Greater Manchester, 2.7 million people, right through to a little town on the east coast of Yorkshire called Withensea, which is just 6,000 people. So really, really different selection of places and things that we need to learn from. When we go to some of these places, we find quite fragmented systems. So this was a little representation of a fragmented system. I'm not too sure where this picture is from, but it's a real microcosm of what is going on. So one organisation has the key to that building. One organisation has put that fence up around that pitch, and it's another organisation's responsibility to cut that pitch and make it a nice place for people to play. So as a community member, it's like navigating a minefield to try and even get access to a place like that. How you can only get to that pitch through that building. You can't climb that fence, and that's often this kind of multi-agency, multi-department approach to trying to get people physically active is maybe not working. This is an advert that came out from one of our pilots in the north, and it's just a really stark, interesting thing for them to say right at the start, is saying that something has to change and it's us. So we really need to reimagine and rethink about the way that we think about delivering physical activity and working with communities to bring physical activity more into their lives. And it's not about being perfect, just making it a little bit better. So if these are all different organisations and initiatives and schemes that are all trying to do the same similar thing, but slightly pointing in different directions, maybe we could just knit some of that a bit closer together and start to point in the same direction. Bit of a basic diagram, but I think it gives you a feel for some of the work that we're trying to do. So some of the early learning that we're seeing and some of the early messages that we're trying to encourage within our 12 pilots, I've tried to sort of distill them down and keep them in quite simple messages. So one of the things around whole system change is that it can really overwhelm you. When you start to think about a place and start to think right from person up to policy level, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it can sometimes overwhelm your thinking. So we're just encouraging people just to start somewhere in that system and see where it takes you. See where it takes you and see what you learn and see what we can build upon and learn from that and start to influence from different parts of the system. We've heard about this all throughout today, but involving those people, involving those unusual suspects, those members of the community that we've maybe not had those deep conversations with before, but to really understand their lives and react really well and really quickly to what they're telling us. Talked about assets a lot today, so building on the assets of a place, not really trying to identify all the wrong things in that place, but what is strong. So we're hearing today that Cranbrook, it's strong, the people in the place is strong, and we can learn a lot from them and build from that. The green space that we have available to us within the town, the belonging to Cranbrook Facebook page, some really great community assets that we can definitely build upon and move forward. Trying not to tip stuff into the place. We haven't got all the answers, we haven't got all the solutions. They will come from the community and come from the residents, and we need to listen to them and not trying to land stuff into the place. Building trust, I think we can only really move at that pace, and so maybe some of the early work that we will see within Cranbrook as part of the pilot is just about building trust with the residents, getting some stuff happening, buying some stuff, getting some clubs running, being really visible, and not only will that see that some movement is happening, but also it will start to build that trust, and we might get into a different conversation with those residents and learn what they want and what we could do for them in the future. And then I guess sustainability has been talked a lot about today, and we really want to build that in from the future. I'm really keen that in 4 years' time I don't stand up here and get a question about why you're stopping and why you're leaving town. I want us to be in a place where actually we've built some stuff that is here to stay, and it's community-led and community-owned. Right, I'm going to hand over to Matt, who is chairing the Move More Cranbrook group. He's town councillor, and he's going to bring to life the approach that we're actually going to take in the town more specifically.
Okay, thanks, James. I think it'll probably be a bit easier if I start right back at the beginning. I moved to Cranbrook about 3 years ago. Went along to a town council meeting with the ambitions, I say ambitions, must have been a weird moment in my life of becoming a town councillor. Sat down, and in the short time that I'd been in Cranbrook, I'd managed to get an understanding of what the demographic was and where the key problems were going to be in around the young demographic, more under fives than anywhere else in the country. And that was part of my presentation to the council in the hope that they would elect me as a councillor. Little did I know that they were really short of councillors anyway, so I was probably going to become one anyway, so I could have saved a lot of the time of putting this pitch together. One of my first remits as a town councillor was to go along to the Sport England finalised review meeting where I met Charlotte earlier on. And the key thing that my message that I tried to get across there was there's lots of really good people involved in and around Cranbrook. There's lots of people who have a good idea of what they feel Cranbrook should be. But what we really needed from the Sport England project coming forward was a catalyst to start getting things delivered, a catalyst to start getting things on the ground so that we could actually start to see to our residents that things were being produced, and it wasn't just Cranbrook time. It wasn't just the developers pitching you that there's going to be a supermarket, there's going to be a leisure centre. By the time you move in, Mr. Osborne, it'll all be built. The reality of that was it's still not built, and I've been there 3 years. So the key around what we're trying to do now in terms of with the Sport England project is look at how we engage with the community and how we encourage what is a real pioneering spirit already within Cranbrook. The spirit there and the community is second to none. I've lived all over the UK, I've lived in various areas in Europe. I've never, ever experienced a community like it. For example, the second busiest night up the pub was when we had the severe snow, and it was about 6 inches deep snow in Cranbrook. People were towing their kids up on sleds. The pub was open. It was a real community environment. Like people tell me it used to be, probably beyond my time, or when I was very, very young. I'm getting old now. But not the way that it seems to be when you talk about communities now. So what this gives us, as James touched on earlier on, is a real unique ability to be able to tap into that and actually get into this pioneering spirit that exists. The Belonging to Cranbrook Facebook page is a real source. It's a real community asset. People go on there, on occasion to moan about stuff, probably more than occasions, as Liffen knows, as a moderator on there. But in the main, it's really useful, and people who move to the town are encouraged to join this because it will become their Bible from what they then do, how they socially interact, if they want to borrow a spirit level, if they need somebody to take them into work because of the snow. All of these kind of things already pre-exist. But this is something that isn't used when we talk about the wider groups that are in here now. to the maximum. We've already got this real social interaction and a group that's used as a forum by all of the residents, but we don't do anything with it. We don't engage with it. We don't promote it. We just kind of do our own thing, and we go around and we survey lots of different individual people and we do lots of different surveys, when the reality is, if you need to ask that information of the demographic type that's in Cranbrook, you need to be engaging with them in social media, because they've moved away from wanting to respond to paper surveys. They don't want to be stopped in the street, because normally it's somebody trying to sign them up for Sky or Virgin or something along those lines, so they're conditioned to doing a quick penguin shuffle and going. And so what we need to do with these people is reach them in the media as they feel comfortable doing it. So one of the things I got involved in about a year ago was the Move More Cranbrook campaign group. And one of the things this gave us an opportunity to do was bring together a lot of key stakeholders with a vested interest in improving or investing into Cranbrook as a town. So one of the things regarding the Move More Cranbrook group going forward is it's looking to position itself in conjunction with Sport England as being the delivery body for the funding and the applications and a lot of the processes that are going to be on the ground for the Sport England delivery pilot. So that only works and that only maintains its position if we are being different about the way that we interact and the way that we engage with people. We need to be looking at app technology. We need to be looking at surveys on Facebook. People who do a survey on Facebook with the hope of getting a free holiday to Barbados, you know, the reality of that is they're never going to do it. So engaging with them to do a survey about clearly changing and defining what their life is in Cranbrook and how we can make it better should be a lot easier to sell on that basis, especially if you offer a free holiday to Barbados on the back end. So this is the position of where we're looking to go with Move More Cranbrook and the Sport England delivery pilot. As James has already touched on earlier on, this isn't about necessarily replacing infrastructure that isn't currently there already within the town. This is about finding a new way. This is about engaging people where they've tried the infrastructure projects before in the past. You put a new pavilion on a cricket pitch, the same 22 people turn up to play cricket every single week. It doesn't encourage anybody to go in there to do anything different. And there's an appreciation that that way hasn't necessarily delivered the results that we need going forward. So what we need to do about is think about different ways of doing it. Families being active together, okay? One of the things that was touched on earlier on is what are we supposed to do as parents while our kids are out there engaging in sporting activity? We've just done a local test with the boxing club, which is starting in Cranbrook, which the town council have just supported for funding. And I believe we're going to be looking to support as well, hopefully, if everything goes ahead next week, with the Sport England delivery pilot. One of the things being mentioned there is trying to get the parents who are there doing something. So get them using some pads out in the atrium, get them doing box fit, get them so that when they come in there and the kids go into where they have to be in a coached environment, the parents have still got something that they can do, even if it's just something silly like playing a little bit of volleyball or something along those lines. You take a softball, kick it around. It will make a difference to them going from being inactive to being active. So there's lots of little test ideas. I know there's a process that's being described as test and learn, which is really key to the Sport England initiative. The problem with saying test and learn to the residents of Cranbrook, who are vastly surveyed, who have been subjected in terms of wanting to learn and test by surveys from pretty much everybody that's represented in this room, is that they feel a bit like guinea pigs. And as Ray mentioned earlier on, yeah, if we're going to be surveying the people in Cranbrook, and if we're going to be dipping into that wealth of knowledge, and if we're going to be going to them and saying, you tell us what we need to learn, we need to be leaving something back to them. And we need to be turning around and saying there's a benefit to them engaging in that way that they can feel is tangible. And it's not just about it looks really good on a headline figure, it's about what that delivers when you're down on ground level. So one of the things we need to work on is actually what does that language mean? Because if we say test and learn to everybody, they're going to be thinking, I've had several tests probably in the past, and I'm not really sure I want to go through those again. So changing the language is key. We need to be looking at issues such as access, opportunity, and affordability. These are the key areas where low demographic families who may be single parent with children, these are the concerns that they're facing. They don't feel that they have access, as described earlier on, to the sports clubs. They feel there's barriers in their place that will stop them being able to take their kids along, either through the opportunity, because they don't believe that that club reaches out to them in the community, or because of an affordability issue. Now, in my private sector role, I deal with people in extreme debt situations, and I can tell you now, when it's a decision between taking your kid football training or being able to put food on the table, the football training doesn't happen in these demographics that we're looking to target. So we need to figure out how we can engage with them, how we can get them along, and how we can break down those three areas into something that's tangible and deliverable to them on the ground. So one of the things that we've been looking at, which Ray touched on earlier on, is the community development role. It's just crazy for a town like Cranbrook, where there's a great community, where there's a great community engagement, where there's lots of people coming to the town council, to the forums, to everything that we're engaged in, saying, we've got this idea, we want to do something. We've got this idea, we want to do something. We've got this idea, we want to do something. Well, where is the support for that? Where's the person who helps them fill in the application forms, who takes them through the stages, who tells them where the relative funding is going to fit? And that's something that we're going to look to facilitate through the Town Council in the community development role, but also within the Move More group in terms of making sure that there are people within that group who can work as support and also guidance going forward. Programme investment, some doing money, a community chest of cash to get things started. This is really, really essential because otherwise, what's the hype? The people in Cranbrook have heard, come in soon, Cranbrook time. It's on the bits of paper from the sit-down groups and draw plans out. Everybody's been told this is what a wonderful town you're living in and these are the wonderful things that are going to be happening. But nothing's happened. So in this pilot, what we need to be doing is we need to be maintaining that there's money there if needed. It's not an empty cash pit. It's not there to support and be frivolous with. But if we're going to really understand about what works, we're going to need to fail as we're understanding what works, because otherwise you're never going to learn. If all you're looking for through surveys and assessments and everything else is everything that's going to have a home run, well, you probably should be down next to a race course on the weekends, because if you're that good at predicting winners, you'll probably have a good flutter. So in our terms, what we want to be able to do is be able to turn around and say, there's money available for the right project that meets the guidance of what we want it to do. It's going to give back to the community, it's going to engage the community, and more importantly, there's a potential that it will leave a long-lasting legacy for Cranbrook at the end of it. So, touch on what James said earlier, we don't have the answers. I definitely don't. I've only been involved for a very short period of time. So if Sport England are coming here and saying we appreciate we don't have all the answers, then what we need to understand is how do we get to them and how do we get to them quickly? So you get to them quickly by engaging with people in the way they want to be engaged with, not trying to force them to engage with you in ways they don't. We get to them with delivering small, tangible developments that they can actually say, I've seen that happen. There's now an incentive for me to go out there and put my head up above the parapet and say I'll start a sporting club, or I'll become a volunteer, or I'll do something to help my community, because I can see it's worked and I can see it's done something going forwards. Okay, so to finalise anything off, if anybody's got any ideas or any suggestions or any relative pre-existing surveys, not ones that they want to do going forwards, then please, by all means, these are the people that we need to get in touch with, because what we want to ensure is, and I think it's a question for everybody else out here, is we want to ensure what our legacy is through this pilot and this project. And I think that's something everyone has to consider themselves here now, what their legacy is going to be in terms of Cranbrook. Ray mentioned earlier on, myself and Ray are the only real residents in here apart from Lithan, but on the stage, and Kim, sorry. So in that sense, what we want to make sure as residents is, it's not just hype. It's not just noise. It's not just everybody telling us their good intentions and what they feel is going to be really great for us. It's actually something tangible that's left behind and becomes a legacy that we can all go on with to move forward and say, we did that. Thank you very much. James?
That's it.